Hello everyone, Desiree here, and welcome back to Notes on the YouTube channel. Now, as I stated, I'd be doing things differently over here, and if you haven't checked our last and first video actually, which is our noteworthy interview episode 1 with Reverend Jerlin, who traveled to Palestine, please check that out. But what I've been doing on TikTok is actually doing monthly topics for book reviews. And so this first one is going to be for my January reads, which is under the topic of liberation. Now, I came up with these themes that kind of correlate to big events that's happening throughout the month, like Women's History Month, Black History Month. But for January, I focused on the topic of liberation because January is usually seen as a time for new beginnings. It's the first start of the year. Everyone's getting their goals and their resolutions together, and we're kind of trying to liberate ourselves from the previous year. We're pushing ourselves forward. We're moving into this new stage of life. Everything feels very fresh, new, very direct, very charged. And so that's part of the reason why I chose the word liberation, but also I just think it's a beautiful word for so many things. And so for January, the two books that we focused on under the topic of liberation were Cursed Daughters by Owen Braithwaite and All Fours by Miranda July. Two very vastly different books, vastly different versions of liberation. We have Cursed Daughters, which is focused on the liberation of a young woman, a Black young woman in Lagos, Nigeria, dealing with family and societal pressures to get married, family curses. So we have that side of liberation. And then in All Fours by Miranda July, we're focused on a woman going through perimenopause, lots of change in her life, really reckoning with the ending of her marriage, and also sexual liberation. So two very different versions of liberation, but I believe there's something to learn from both of those. And so this is also great if you follow me on TikTok and you like watching the book reviews there, but maybe you kind of prefer to do it as a podcast, and you have this whole video with both of the book reviews in one place. So yes, thank you so much for being here. Thank you again for tuning in. Check out our last video, episode 1. It's a really amazing conversation, a really amazing interview, if I do say so myself. And happy reading. And I'll see you next month for our February reads. Bye. Hello everyone, my name is Desiree and welcome back to Notes On. So as I stated in my last video, we're going to be doing things a little bit differently here in 2026, and each month is going to have its own theme, and the theme for January is liberation. And the first book that we're going to be talking about for the year of 2026 is Cursed Daughters by Owen Braithwaite. So at the beginning of the novel, we're given a few facts. One is that Monif has unfortunately unalived herself by walking into the sea. Annie is believed by her mom and the other women in her family, as well as her uncle, to be the reincarnation of Monif, as she was born early, just a few days after Monif walked into the sea. And what we see throughout the novel is Annie is having these very vivid dreams and visions of her late aunt. She is sleepwalking. And so there's a lot of mystery around who she is as her own person and who she is connected to Monif. Because in all actuality, they basically look the same, except for a few spots of vitiligo on the back of Annie's neck. So I thought that this would be a really great start to the theme of liberation, because it's not just Annie looking to liberate herself from her family, from societal pressures as a young woman in Nigeria, but she is also trying to free herself from this connection that she has to this woman that she's never met, but she looks exactly like. So here is the question that I'm going to be posing on my Substack review. You may not believe in the curse, but what if the curse believes in you? Now you're like, what curse? What curse? You talked about reincarnation. What about a curse? So there's actually something called the Faladun curse that only affects the women in this family. So I'm going to read it to you. It will not be well with you. No man will call your house home, and if they try, they will not have peace. Your daughters are cursed. They will pursue men, but the men will be like water in their palms. Your granddaughters will love in vain. Your great-granddaughters will labor for acknowledgement, but they will fall short of other women. Your daughters, and all the women to come will suffer for man's sake. I'm going to put that on the screen because I know I'm not going to say it right. Then she swiped the blood from one of her many wounds and smeared it on the ground. Faranmi laughed. She was confident in herself, in her beauty, and in the beauty of her daughter. But this time, when her husband left the village, he did not return. 12-year-old Ibn told 16-year-old Munif that she did not believe in curses. That's fine, Munif said, between the slow chewing of gum, but what if the curse believes in you? And I absolutely loved that. So I was like, that's gonna be part of the question. So in my Substack review, I discuss everything that I just mentioned in greater detail, more about the family curse, which is another layer of the difficulty of Eni trying to liberate herself from this curse. Also, her relationship with her mother, her aunt, and her grandmother, all who live in this house full of ghosts. Ghosts of the women that the house has been built to re-inhabit and re-welcome when they get pushed out by the men or their husbands that they've been seeing, and all of the great loves in their lives eventually send them back to that house. And how staying in this house of ghosts, staying in this physical kind of cage of scorned women, all along with being a reincarnation, has made liberation extremely difficult for Eni, but in the end she finds her way. All that to say, you should definitely read Cursed Daughters. It was exactly what I needed to kind of like jump myself back into reading for the new year. She is thick, but I promise you the story is so engaging that I think it's just under 400 pages. I finished it in like a couple days. Like, this woman fed me. She really did. She really did. So that is all for our first read of 2026. And I will see you back here very soon for our second read amongst the theme of liberation for January. And I'll see you next time.
Hello, everyone. Bye. Desiree here, and welcome back to Notes On. Today on Notes On, we are going to be discussing All Fours by Miranda July. I really sat and I thought about it. Like, aside from memoirs, I don't really read fiction narrative that's focused around older women. And All Fours is focused around a main character who finds out later in the book that she's going through perimenopause. She's 45 years old. And I needed that. A little fun fact about me. I am turning 28 this year, and I've always been excited to get older, because getting older for me meant like being in my 70s and my 60s and looking like, you know, Sheryl Lee Ralph and Angela Bassett. Like, for me, getting older was great. Like, I had no problems with it. I will be 50 telling people that I'm 50, and they're going to be like, oh my gosh, really? I thought you were like maybe in your 30s. I'd be like, I know, girl, wear that sunscreen every day, you know? So I personally didn't fear getting older. I saw getting older as a rite of passage. It means that you were wiser. It means also that you were better off financially because you made all your mistakes. And I was always really excited for that version of me. And reading this sent me into another level of appreciation for getting older, especially as a woman. So let me tell you why. So she plans this whole drive to New York, right? First week is driving to New York. Then the week actually in New York, she's booked this really nice hotel, all of these things and outings that she's going to do with her friends. And then the last week to drive back home to California, right? She makes it as far as Monrovia, which is about an hour and a half outside away from where she lives with her husband and her son. Like, she doesn't make it very far. She becomes sort of infatuated with this younger guy named Davey, and they basically have this sexual but not fully sexual relationship where they like fully get to know each other. He's a dancer. They're doing all these experiences. She pays $20,000 to get a motel room modified based off of one of her favorite hotels in Paris. Like, it's kind of giving spiraling a bit. I was like, please go to New York. Like, what are you doing with this 20-something? I'm 20-something. But what are you doing with this 20-something married boy who works at a Hertz gas station an hour and a half away from your house? I like read this sometimes like this. Audibly saying, please stop doing that. This is embarrassing. Please stop doing that. That was, I feel like, the hardest part of the book for me to read. I thought. And then she gets home, right? And she's kind of like scratching out the walls, trying to get back to those 3 weeks in Monrovia. You know, she's an artist of multiple disciplines. So she decides she's going to like post this dancing video. She believes that the guy that she was, you know, messing around with is going to see this and it's going to text her. I really need you to sit down. I really need you to stop. Like, I want you to question these things, but the way that you're going about it is very, very destructive. Hopefully that was enough to get you like hooked, because I was literally reading this like, but so much of it in between all of these like random acts of, I don't know what, she's asking these really deep questions about what it's like to be a woman over the age of 45. You know, are you just going to lose parts of yourself? Is that just kind of what happens? She's going to the OBGYN. She's being told she's in perimenopause. She kind of lied about being in menopause to her husband to explain away things, because usually women say menopause and men go, oh, sure, right, yes, of course. How could I forget about that very real serious thing that I probably don't know that much about, you know? Okay. So I know I just gave y'all a whole synopsis right now, but this is the question that I'm discussing over on my Substack, which is, am I doing this right? And I think she's asking herself that question in more ways than one. What I loved the most about this is that she is looking to other women to help her through this, to fill this void. She's talking to women in their 60s and their 70s. She has this community of women older than her and her age that she can ask these questions. How are you dealing with marriage? How are you dealing with sex in your marriage? Are you guys open? Would you ever consider doing this or doing that? Women know this, but we talk a lot about female friendships and the bonds that women have with one another and how important it is. And it never stops being important. You know, it's important now in your 20s. It's important when you're going through menopause. It's important when you're in your 60s, in your 70s, when you're in your 80s, and maybe you're a widow and all of your children are grown and they have their own families. This continued need for relationship amongst women across ages and across generations, and it only enriches your life. And so I loved that she was questioning all of these things with an audience. She was inviting these women to be a part of the conversation, talking to them one-on-one, inviting them to this refurbished motel room, you know, and giving them snacks and just orchestrating this. That motel room, that motel in general, becomes such a hub and an incubator for real women connecting with one another. And I absolutely loved that. And it felt so powerful and so beautiful to read. And then to see her at the very end, you know, a couple years later, finally doing the things that she was originally going to do at 45. And life is short, you know, time isn't guaranteed, but when you're supposed to be doing something, when something is for you, then that's when you do it. And it can be frustrating. It was frustrating for her. She's like, why didn't I just go to New York? Why don't I just go to New York? I could still make it. I could buy a plane ticket. I could do this. But there was something that was supposed to happen to her in Monrovia, which is why she stayed there. As frustrating as it was for her and as frustrating as it was for me, because I am not like, it's fine what she did with that boy. I'm not saying that. Hear me now. But she was supposed to do that because her coming back and completely blowing up her life and blowing up her marriage was really the thing that ended up saving the bond that she had with her husband. It ended up saving the relation, even her friendships, because, you know, sometimes as friends we could be like, you got one more time, but you're doing too much and I might have to like leave you on the side if you keep at this behavior. I guess I would call it the positive calamities of blowing up your life, possibly, per se. There was a lot of good retrospection that came from it. Like, I think about Marty Supreme, like the overall story, the overall drive and passion, love, respect, power to the people. The details, I will not be repeating that. But there's something about the story, there's something about the drive that really makes you go, let me chew on that. Let me like really mull that over a little bit, you know? And I feel similarly to this at times, you know, some of the details, I'm like, that is what I have to say. Honestly, I have a lot to say about this. I wrote my initial feelings in my Substack review. Link is in bio, so please give that a read and let me know what you think. Let me know if you've read this. I think especially as women tap into this, try not to we read and we don't judge, right? Just give her some time. She eventually gets there, I promise. Yes, thank you for joining me for another book review under the topic of liberation. The next time we see each other, we will be in February, so it will be Black History Month and also the month of love. So stay tuned for the new books coming in February. Exciting. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you next time. Okay, bye.